know. And maybe use it or whatever. Forget everything that you've ever known.
Oh, we gotta
about
use
the
it
Men
then.
in Black.
You gotta use
yes,
it.
fucking use it. All right, use it. But I think technically we owe money to Warner Brothers if you do use it.
Okay.
But this story is a tale. It is a phenomenon that I've obviously been tangentially into for many, many years. And when you further dive into the subject, number one, it's definitely like a open a manhole to the deepest, darkest recesses of ufology.
Okay.
It is. We are going to be covering soup to nuts every single theory that gets looped into the Men in Black story that is anywhere in the ufological world.
Soup to nuts. I never understood that term, soup to nuts, because soup is a food, and the nuts
are also a food.
No, they're a screw. The
soup to nuts is it's the tale of the original guy. Actually, it's the true story of the original Chef Boyardee, who was a real chef, which is true. He was a chef in World War II, understood that he could mass produce raviolis for our troops. He was into splooshing.
All right.
Well, sticking his dick in some nuts.
Got it.
Sticking his nuts in some soup.
All right.
But this is a truly frightening story. Okay. The Men in Black are the perennial real villains of the UFO world. The only thing close to them is the reptilians.
Oh.
And when you get into their lore, I mean, honestly, I was truly having nightmares.
Yeah, me too.
All right, makes sense. Can't wait to hear about it.
Well, despite the myriad of different tales told about the Men in Black, there's one thing that all Men in Black stories share. No matter what the ultimate aim of the various Men in Black are, the common denominator in all of these stories is the keeping of secrets.
Ooh. Secrets are no fun.
However, what the secrets are and the reasons behind the secrets tend to vary depending.
I know you have to. If you whisper secrets like that, it's like they want to tell you it.
Well, the reasons behind the secrets tend to vary depending on what form the Men in Black take.
Okay.
Some of it is indeed just about the cover-ups, but other stories belie something either far more sinister or far more mystical.
Ooh.
Secret.
Or both. Okay.
What?
Wow. Both.
But before we get into those stories, let's acknowledge our main source for today. Today's book is The Real Men in Black by Nick Redfern, which is a really fun collection of stories that I'd highly recommend for anyone into Grant Morrison-style high strangeness.
And we interviewed him for our Patreon series, and I will say, upon the looking at the picture of the back of this book and also talking to him in person, I don't even know how he holds his keys from being covered in pussy juice.
Yeah, if you dig the Invisibles and all like the really weird shit that is underneath the story of the Invisibles, like The Real Men in Black is absolutely the book for you.
All right.
Also, and I'll also bring up the case book on the Men in Black by Jim Keith, which is another book that I have been reading. Never mind, we'll get to it.
And I would like to also bring up this unused script from Men in Black 4. I personally discovered it while we were in Los Angeles, and it's got a lot of things to say about society.
So, let's begin the tale of the Men in Black in the mid-1940s with the concept's originator.
All right.
Albert Bender.
Cool. That's a pretty good name for a concept originator of the usually these guys have goofier names. Albert Bender.
Albert Bender's a great name.
Yeah, strong guy.
This guy is a proto-nerd.
Yeah.
He is the prototype of the super nerd, and he was the first person to ever be visited by the Men in Black.
Really?
Albert Bender was a chief timekeeper at the Acme Shear Company, which was, at the time, the world's largest manufacturer of scissors.
Wait, hold on a second. You're telling me that this guy was the chief timekeeper when everyone is busting their ass to make scissors so that you can inevitably stab your family with them? He's just like, what do you do? He's like, I keep the time. Yeah! That's it?
I am the timekeeper. We got 7 minutes left on the afternoon shift to get all these papers all snipping because they're not going to snip themselves. Let's go. Snip it up, everybody. Let's put some snip into it. All right, come on. It's a scissor factory.
That's amazing. So this guy, he was like one of the first jobs to be lost to automation. In this case, just a clock.
Very much so.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'd imagine, and I mean, I don't know exactly how these assembly lines work, but I would imagine in an assembly line type of atmosphere, a guy keeping time on everything and making sure that everybody is doing exactly exactly what they should, exactly when they should, is a very important job.
Maybe I'll like him maybe a little bit further on in the story, but right now I hate the chief timekeeper.
But part of it is that I think it's a lateral move, because at some point he's sitting there and be like, I have a question. Why have we not developed any left-handed scissors? And they're like, how about we make you the timekeeper? Not the most hated position in the factory.
Because of Albert's obsession with time, he kept 20 chiming clocks in the attic room where he lived, and every 15 minutes they'd all go off at once.
Wow, this guy, this is a Twilight Zone episode.
Oh, yeah.
I guess it kind of is in a weird way, huh?
It really is, especially because he turned his entire apartment into a horror house.
Yeah. The house where that attic room was located was shared with his stepfather, but Albert made the best of it by painting his walls with super metal images of monsters and ghosts.
All right.
Like, he was actually a pretty cool guy.
This dude was into it. He was watching the first, the formations of the first sci-fi movies. He was a big sci-fi nerd. All of the Amazing Stories articles is what he was deeply into. He loved adventure stories and things about flying saucers and ghosts and vampires and shit. And he lived in a creepy house filled with clocks.
Yeah.
That he also painted demons all over the walls, which he shared with his stepfather, which is a weird relationship to cohabitate with.
Now, as Henry said, this guy, Albert Bender, made his room into a makeshift haunted house that he called his Chamber of Horrors, and he built the whole thing just to scare his friends when they came over. Whole thing had rubber bats, and he constantly played 1950s Halloween sound effects records full of thunder and sobbing.
He'd invite the women over from the factories with their other factory boyfriends, because when you work in a factory with women that their jobs are to polish the scissors, and the men's jobs are to hinge the scissors, and they all have to keep each other sane so they don't start stabbing each other with the scissors.
It's a dangerous office, yeah.
And so he would do these fun things where he'd invite everybody to have a party at his house, and he's like, you must see my Chamber of Horrors. And they all go up into the attic, and where he lived with his stepfather, and he's like, never mind, father, he's not my real father. And then he'd go and they'd be looking around, because also, this is the 1940s, so they haven't seen shit like this. They don't really understand the idea of a predilection with ghosts and demons. And so they'd be like, what the fuck is this? And then he'd rig these things up where he could drop spiders from the ceilings onto the girls. And he was like, and they just ran back to the arms of their strong boyfriends, and I say, who needs them?
I would never mess with anyone who works in it's a knife factory.
Yeah,
it's a glorified knife factory.
Yeah, but you can just go buy knives. You don't have to get knives from work.
No, but you could take them from work back in the day. You could just do that. Whatever. So, what was the wife still around, or
no? It was just him and his
just
stepfather.
him and his stepfather.
Yeah. Who knows?
Wow.
Two single dudes just fucking having a killer time, man.
You're right about that. Is a strange combo.
See, Albert, he came from one of those witchy families who always told horrifying stories about what became of their relatives. You know those types of families where just something bad has happened to everybody.
Right.
Like, for example, one tale the family told said a relative died of a brain hemorrhage caused by a ghost that haunted the local cemetery.
Ooh.
Yeah,
that is
fucking awesome. It was a hot ghost woman. That's true.
Really? There's a lot of info here.
But Bender also suffered from intense OCD, as well as another possible undiagnosed condition, which may have contributed to some of his more fantastical interpretations of the events to follow, but we'll get into that later.
Honestly, OCD, probably a good condition to have for the chief timekeeper.
The best condition to have for chief timekeeper.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. That's how you make sure every second is accounted for and not a single snip is left on the fucking dance floor.
So Albert Bender's deep dive into the paranormal began in 1946, a full year and a half prior to the Kenneth Arnold sightings, which many in the UFO community consider to be the first major credible sighting of modern times.
Look that up if you want some good UFO history. It's the first major recorded UFO sighting. He was a pilot, and he submitted an official record of seeing these discs flying around his plane.
Yeah.
So he's really on the forefront here of all of this stuff.
Oh, yeah, because the whole thing with him started with the ill-fated Flight 19, whose disappearance kicked off the world's fascination with the Bermuda Triangle.
Ooh. And now we know that was ocean farts.
Yeah, basically, right?
After that, Albert devoted every free moment he could find to researching the paranormal and the occult. By 1950, that research had intensified to the point where Bender felt confident enough to establish, along with a few buddies, one of the first UFO networks, the precursor to organizations like NICAP and MUFON.
Ooh, so this is in the 1940s, just getting together with a bunch of other people. I feel like dressed really well, because everyone just seemed to dress really well back then, and talking about UFOs.
Everyone had the mother of pearl shirt with tan suspenders, tan pants with that weird kind of sweat stains on it,
right.
Cigarette stain ties, a lot of goop being used in the hair, even though they got nobody to look good for.
Right.
But they wake up every day, they put pants and suspenders on because it keeps them from off of themselves because their feet were too crooked to be in the war.
Well, that's not so bad if you don't got to be in the war.
Now, Bender's network was the International Flying Saucer Bureau, a.k.a. the IFSB.
This is gonna be me. Once I'm done with all this show business fucking bullshit, I'm gonna be able to just discard all of this stuff and just go and just let my mind play and form a group of other like-minded individuals.
Yes.
And we will get to the bottom of the Men in Black issue.
If I ever have children, I can't wait to go and have them visit Uncle Henry, and then I'll slowly pull them closer to me, and then we'll leave.
You're too innocent to handle the truth. I've been marred by the truth.
All
Turned
right,
into
then.
this bent creature.
Good to see you, Henry.
Now, it took 2 years from the original conception of the IFSB for it to get off the ground, but when it finally did, the whole thing took off in part to its relatively popular magazine, Space Review.
Here's my review, Jupiter. 1 star.
What's wrong
No
with...
tits on it. I gotta tell you what, 1 star, no tits on it. Also, would not serve me a hot dog, no matter how much I yelled at it.
That is, it's a planet, so...
But the IFSB nor Space Review were fated to last very long, as just a few months after it was all established, the harassment began.
They were getting harassed?
They were getting harassed.
Why are you going to harass these people?
Oh, you're about to find out.
Oh, my God. Leave them alone.
You didn't read the outline.
Makes me more in the moment. No, I did. I pretend to forget it. That's a trick. It's like when it's like I have that little Men in Black clicker. It's all a performance, Henry. See, that's my performance is so good that you don't even think I'm
forget.
performing. Yeah, that's true. Marcus can attest. I'm looking at it right now. Good Lord.
Well, the harassment began with what would become a regular part of Men in Black encounters: phone calls. Now, when the MIB call, sometimes the receiver is met only with an eerie silence. But
I'm gonna have to correct you on there. It's MIB.
MIB.
You've got to say it. You got to say the MIB.
Right.
I will fight you on this.
yeah,
All right.
I have to say the MIB. I can't say MIB.
I don't know. MIB makes them sound like they have the same body as the Violator from Punisher. I just feel like they're like, hey, how are you? We're MIB. And it doesn't quite instill the fear of MIB, but at the same time, I like it, though. I do like it still.
Sounds like the mentally handicapped man that J. Edgar Hoover kept underneath his desk that would suck on his feet all day.
Well, thank God
Ooh,
for
I'm
it.
gonna get that John Lennon. Ooh.
All right. I won't call them MIBs anymore.
I like MIBs.
Now, what's the difference between Men in Black and MIB?
MIB stands for a group of them.
But doesn't Men in Black, it's not Man in Black. At no point is it ever a Man in Black. Are they ever alone?
Yeah.
They are, okay.
The MIB is just, you say Men in Black when it is you're talking about them esoterically.
Okay.
MIB is the entire genre of Men in Black.
See, I
believe MIB. No. Men in Black. Men in Black is the entomological origin.
You know what? I am actually understanding why this made you dumber. Just get it out. Get it out.
The Men in Black is the concept of Men in Black.
Okay.
And MIB are a group of Men in Black.
All right. And MIBs are not there.
Not there. Not allowed. Not allowed. So when the MIB call, sometimes the receiver is met only with an eerie silence. But some people who have had experiences say that there's either a metallic screeching or a garbled robotic voice speaking nonsense.
Tell me, do you like Kathy Griffin? You're wrong. You're wrong. You're wrong.
So they're pranking people.
Well, they're intimidating people because
I
it's
see.
very spooky.
avocado sandwich, why don't you, my good friend? Are you my friend? You are my enemy, avocado sandwich.
Strange phone calls coming to the house this week.
Well, in the case of Bender, it was just a stillness that inspired his anxiety. Then, Bender started to believe he was being followed. After one night at a sci-fi movie, Bender went home, opened the door to his room, and was met with the overpowering stench of sulfur. He then saw a bright object hovering in the middle of the room, but when he turned on the light, it vanished. So Albert checked his research files, and due to his intense OCD, he knew for a fact that someone had been perusing.
Secrets.
Secrets, yeah. Or just like the stepfather looking for like a pair of socks to wear because he didn't want to go wash any of his own socks, and then that was.
There's got to be a titty magazine somewhere in one of these shelves.
And things only got worse from there. For an entire year, Bender was put through the ringer, followed everywhere by the smell of sulfur, plagued with migraines and poltergeist activity, and most disturbing of all, he was haunted by men in black suits.
There's a scene in this that I thought it's pretty fun, where he is at the movie theater watching a movie and he felt someone staring at him. I don't know if any of you have ever had that. I get it quite a bit because I like to see horror movies alone and I cackle throughout them. So people just kind of stare at me all the time. They're always eyeballing me, and it's just been like, do you really want to be eyeballing the man cackling alone in the horror movie? Like, should you be? Like, I don't think you should. You should leave him to his fucking devices.
Well,
So
I don't know. I don't think you were really intimidating too many people either. Because you got your big gulp, you got your nachos.
Well, I have brought either a canned wine or a canned beer. I'm sitting there drinking it in the fucking go between my legs, sucking on my vape. There's a lot of reasons people are looking at me.
Sure.
But I'm sitting there to imagine, but Alfred Bender's sitting there watching the movie, and he feels something staring at him. And then he looks over, and there's a man crouched at the end of the row staring at him, and his eyes are glowing like this, wow, 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 wow. And then he's like, what? And he turns away, looks back, dude's gone. And then he sees this again and again. He's walking through the streets alone, seeing these things with glowing eyes coming at him. And I have this whole scene in my head of him walking through the alleyways to that Billy Idol song, Eyes Without a Face.
The one that inspired Richard Ramirez.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Without a face. I don't know the rest of the words.
So he's having a real Pee Wee Herman experience in that movie theater. Everyone's just staring at him, doing whatever he's doing.
Oh, yeah.
My goodness.
Yeah, and he said that every time he'd see these men, he'd feel sick to his stomach. Then they actually showed up at his house in a group of 3. They were all wearing black suits and Homburg hats, which are pretty much like a slightly different style of fedora.
They're very nice hats and a lot better than fedoras overall.
Yeah, I suppose so.
Sure.
I'd say it's definitely a choice.
Yeah. That's what people did back then, though.
So the men communicated with Bender telepathically and told him that any and all research on UFOs should stop immediately.
When he first got spoken to by them, at first he didn't know what was happening. What you would start to do is they have during the International Flying Saucer was it Bureau?
Yeah.
International Flying Saucer Bureau, I believe, yes.
Well, during the IFSB meetings, they would have these they would sit and be like, first of all, what we're doing here is we're welcoming aliens to the planet Earth.
Okay.
At the time, there was a lot of fear of flying saucers and aliens. So they were like, we're going to be the welcome crew. So a part of what they used to do, which is now what quote unquote, Dr. Stephen Greer does, they sit in a circle and they would mentally picture themselves shooting up into the universe and sending a message of peace out, saying, come aliens, come to us, come on me, go, come.
Right, I think you're stuck on the word there, yeah.
And so he would imagine himself floating on a raft in the Atlantic. And that was one of the after he had started seeing them, and they had broke into his house, he said he met them, and they showed up in this weird, this kind of non-space, this black space, and the first things they said to him, which is, I just want to happen to be so bad. You have dedicated yourself to the solution of the strange problem of unidentified objects in your atmosphere. Your interest is deep.
and sincere. You have devoted many hours to it. We also know that such interest and determination might lead to something that could bring you harm.
So then after that, there's like, I also brought some punch, and I know, Steve, you were supposed to bring some cookies for last week's mistake. What do you do? How do you even look at these people after all this?
Man, I mean, everybody's just like, wow.
But then, are they friends in public? Like,
No,
what do you even?
you never acknowledge these secret friends.
You never acknowledge
No,
each
no,
other.
no. It was like when I did a group of all comedian D&D playing. It was a bunch of us playing D&D together, and no one would speak about it out loud to anyone else.
Okay, it's a secret.
And the interesting thing about that big ritual that they would do where they would all sit around together is they would print in Space Review, they would announce what date and time they'd be doing it, and they would ask all the readers to do it at the same time.
That's awesome!
So they would which also is really interesting because, to bring up the Invisibles a little bit, Grant Morrison did much the same type of thing when the Invisibles was on the verge of being canceled. We talked about this before where he asked all of the readers to do a masturbation schedule all at the same time to save the series from being canceled, and it worked.
Huh. Look at that.
Oh, yeah. So these types of mass, these big mass rituals are, I wouldn't say they're real or anything like that, but, there's something to it. There's something to all that shit.
What if you were late? Would Bender, he would kick you out?
Yeah.
I feel like he's not dealing with
he's a
tardiness.
timekeeper. That's his first job, no matter what.
Interesting.
Well, after the Men in Black told Bender to cease all investigative activities, they then confiscated every copy of Space Review that they could find and disappeared in a cloud of yellow fog, again leaving behind the smell of sulfur.
Farts.
Right.
And so, just a year and a half after publication began, Space Review had its last issue, printed with this message.
The mystery of the flying saucers is no longer a mystery. The source is already known, but any information about this is being withheld by orders from a higher source. Secrets. We would like to print the full story in Space Review, but because of the nature of the information, we have been advised in the negative. Sorry. We advise those engaged in saucer work to be very cautious.
All right. Is it possible the sulfur, maybe it was a dangerous situation with the sewers? You do want
No, you're thinking of methane. Sulfur and methane are two very
They
different.
smell different?
Very different.
Very
yeah.
different.
Yeah,
Smells, though.
Yeah, sulfur smells
Think
like
about what-
hell, and methane smells like farts. That's what farts are.
I
They're
thought
methane.
that sulfur smelled. Sulfur has a bit of a fart smell to
No,
it.
no, it's like sulfur is matches.
I don't know. You know what I mean? I never took that sommelier class where I could smell the different things and tell what it is.
No, I guess the sulfur, actually, you light a match after something hour. Right?
Yeah, sulfur covers up the fart.
Sure.
Cancels out.
Yes.
Now, of course, a cryptic message like the one Henry just read was perfect fodder for the already competitive and paranoid field of UFO research. These guys have been jealous of each other from the very beginning.
Oh, they weren't getting along.
Oh, well, different UFO groups are very jealous of other UFO groups because they all want to be the only one with the story.
Right.
And even though Bender dropped the story for the time being, a fellow IFSB member named Gray Barker picked it up and ran with it.
Okay.
In 1953, Barker published a book called They Knew Too Much About Flying Saucers.
What's your book all about? That is the most self-descriptive title of all time.
They all had to be like that because people were buying things. They didn't get to read reviews back in the day. You'd have to actually choose a book by its cover. So you had to make it good.
Okay.
Yeah. And that book featured Albert's story, and it coined the name which would serve as the catch-all boogeyman for conspiracy theorists everywhere, the Men in Black.
Ooh.
Now, Barker is an interesting character here because he was at the same time a believer and a known hoaxer who liked to play pranks on his fellow ufologists.
Okay.
He even did it like the fellow Men in Black believers. He'd crank call them, like specifically the most gullible ones, and he'd imitate like the harassment that the Men in Black would do.
Interesting.
Hello, is Mr. Bender there?
Yeah, this is.
Yeah, hey, buddy.
Yeah.
My name's Tom. I'm one of the guys in black. Yeah. Yeah, man.
I've been what?
You should return yourself to the asshole store. Bye.
Oh! That's sad. Yeah, I mean, I guarantee you, these guys, as soon as that prank call ended, they're just like, could have done without that. It's not as if my days are going extremely well as it is. Would have been nice if it was a pleasant phone call. Poor guys.
Oh yeah, and Barker, he also liked to egg people on, particularly Albert Bender. He would just encourage these guys, and he would build up the story, like almost gaslighting them,
right?
And like telling them that the stories were something that were actually much bigger than they remembered it being.
But it really muddies up. Where's the truth?
Yeah.
Well, that's what later on other ufologists will go on to say that Barker wrote both books, because we'll find out that also Bender wrote a book. Well, I'll get into that after that. Let me get into that after that.
Yeah.
But Bender was really serious about the story. There's a core truth in this that seems to be, at some point, he was actually approached by, feds at some point and telling him to stop it. And then that was the original impetus to stop the IFSB. He was getting really fucking paranoid. And at that time, obviously, when you are dealing with all this alien stuff, for him, it was goofy. But then it seemed to be there actually were eyes on him. And then Barker went and kind of flipped it up to sell some books.
I see. Okay. So Barker doesn't seem to be he's not the nicest guy.
He's
playing around a little bit.
It's a part of the mythos of ufology is storytellers like Barker.
Okay.
Yeah, and so, Bender, for a while, he stuck to the, relatively tame, if not spooky, Men in Black story that he originally told.
Okay.
But 9 years after that encounter, Bender published a book called Flying Saucers and the Three Men.
And boy, is it a doozy.
No.
I read about 30 pages of it. And it gets pretty erotic.
It gets erotic?
There's a lot of erotic writing going on with these characters. There's
Really?
specifically one guy that we're going to talk about later on.
In the alien abduction sense of erotica, like the fellow that we interviewed, Henry?
Yes.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. He gets real Barbarella with it.
And so he's writing all of this stuff next to his stepfather? Just staring at his stepfather?
Yeah, man, because the sex isn't happening in his room next to his stepfather, so it's happening in his mind.
No, they're not all living in the attic together.
No, but it's the biggest house. You gotta go, you meet at the refrigerator because you're both a little hungry, and it's what are you working on? And you're like, I wish I could tell you, stepfather, but it's disgusting for me to discuss with you.
No, he would have been like, you can tell me all about it. I'm a stepfather. Stepfathers, all we do is fuck.
Well, in the story of the Flying Saucers and the Three Men, the Men in Black didn't just threaten Bender and vanish into a cloud of yellow fog. In this version, the three men surrounded Bender and rendered him unconscious with nothing more than a touch of their hand on his shoulders. Next thing Bender knew, he had awoken in a secret underground alien base in Antarctica.
Ooh.
There, the Men in Black told him that they were not human, but were in fact only appearing to be so, inhabiting bodies they'd stolen from Earthlings.
What? Can you imagine getting your body stolen? What a rough day that is. Just going back to your wife and be like, I'm a ghost. They took my body. I promise you it's still me.
Yeah, like Ghost Dad, which is unfortunately a bad reference now.
Now, the aliens went on to say that our planet, planet Earth, was a cursed planet full of suffering and chaos, and unlike any other planet in the galaxy. And the only reason why they came to our shanty town of a planet was because they needed our seawater as a power source.
Yeah, not so shitty now, is it? Yeah, you got that. You need half of our planet, don't you?
And we were only one of the many planets used. Pretty much as they looked at us as like an intergalactic gas station in a bad neighborhood.
All right.
Hell yeah, man. We're the street trash now. Hell yeah. Cool. We scare everybody else.
So after berating Bender for God knows why, the alien revealed his true form. And turns out the alien was almost identical to the artist's representation of what we know as the Flatwoods Monster of Braxton County, West Virginia.
Woo!
What?
And that's not the only time West Virginia will be brought up in this story.
Just please tell me you didn't turn into like a giant spider like the end of it. Like, what did he turn into?
Kind of sort of like the Flatwoods monster is among the more terrifying looking cryptids, where it's got these huge red round eyes. It's got kind of a hood behind its head, but that kind of looks like a big plant, like long arms with big spindly fingers.
Cool.
And it wears like kind of a dress, but like a weird, like silver one.
It's very creepy, and it's much akin to the Mothman.
Yeah.
With big glowing eyes, and it looks like a big old labia with an alien face in the middle of it.
Oh my goodness. Well, that's exciting. Like Mosh and Thrasher. Remember that? The Headbangers.
Oh yeah.
Remember them? They
What
were
does that have to do with this?
They wear skirts. I'm just trying to connect.
Oh, you
I
just
don't
any
know.
way to connect.
I'm like, whatever. I heard the word skirts. I'm like, I remember when a tag team used to wear skirts. So I don't know.
I understand. So after these guys got Bender good and scared, they sent him back to his attic with a warning. They said, quote,
You are charged to keep our secret. We do not wish to take extreme action, and you will find that you will often consider giving away some part of this information. When you get such thoughts, you will be reminded of the consequences by headaches, which will be almost unbearable to you. At such times, beware of more serious conditions we can bring about. A 4-hour erection.
Whoa.
Got you, Bender. See if
Oh, man. Could have done without that.
now, Henry, maybe you can answer this, but why did they do that?
What do you mean?
Why did they take him all the way to Antarctica just to tell them that humans are a bunch of pieces of shit, and then show them who they actually were and why they were there? And then tell them, don't tell no one.
I literally have the word for word their reason from the book, Casebook on the Men in Black.
Thank you.
We feel that you are a very good contact for us on your planet of Earth. You are an average person, and we know that what we tell you and show you will not be believed by anyone you might tell.
Yeah.
You are not a person of great renown on your planet. Therefore, we have nothing to fear at present.
I like that he got a little self-defacing humor in there.
No, that was the alien saying that.
No, I know.
Yeah,
But he was writing it.
He was writing it, but that's the thing. That's still not a reason. I'm asking why they told not why they told him specifically that. Why they would tell anybody?
Because
that.
no one's going to believe him.
But
He's just an average person.
yeah, but why would they tell
Because
even an
you're
average
saving
person?
this is
They're
second
also
episode
bored.
stuff, Marcus. This is trickster god shit. This is the trickster god shit that's been around since the beginning of time. Is that they pull you up, they yank you out of their life, they yank you out of your life specifically just to fuck with you. And half the time, what have we learned about aliens? Even if aliens are real and you've been abducted, why should we fucking trust them? Which is the double layer of paranoia that creeps into your mind as you really begin to study UFOs. That's how you really begin to understand that you've become a ufologist, when you can't even trust the words out of the aliens' mouths.
Yeah, Marcus, you bring up a good point, and I'm sure there are men in black who just go back to their men in black managers and are like, why do we have to abduct this guy again? Like, why do we have to bring him to wherever the hell we're going to bring him? What is the point, sir?
You are not to ask the reasons why, you are to do and die.
Will do.
Now, admittedly, that story's kind of goofy.
A little goofy.
It's a little goofy. However, there very well could be some truth to Bender's story. It could just be that Bender filtered his visit by Men in Black through the lens of mental illness combined with a close friend's wild imagination.
Okay.
Now, back in the early 50s, and this is true, the FBI put together a group of scientists called the Robertson Panel, whose job was to assess the national security implications of all the UFO sightings that plagued America for the previous half-decade.
That's good. Maybe you put him in a big rubber band and say you don't get out of that rubber band until you solve the UFO issue. And that'll be good, and then that'll keep them together.
Oh, so the government works like Double Dare.
Yeah, kind of. And it's headed by Mark Summers. Speaking of OCD, I love Mark Summers.
Oh, yes. Now, the panel ended up concluding that the UFOs in and of themselves